So, yes, I'm going to talk about recognizing fake news. And yes, I'm also stealing some um, jargon from the pandemic. We're trying to flatten the propaganda curve. Because while fake news, propaganda interchangeably in this presentation, while both of these things have been a problem for a long time, it really came to light for me last spring. Um, because here we are in this unfolding crisis, and I was seeing people who I respect and admire take positions that just felt inexplicable. You know, people whose general points of view about humanity and kindness and graciousness were the same. We're just almost as if we were seeing different realities. Um, Now, I'm not here to argue about any truths, not my truth versus your truth versus someone else's truth. I'm not going to take a side on whether masks take away our personal freedoms or not, or if liberals hate America, or if Trump is the next coming of the Antichrist. It's the end result that troubles me and maybe you. So here we are battling this virus, and instead of a strong, united home front pulling together, we're at war with each other in the pandemic. And if you're like me, we feel like this a lot. It feels hopeless sometimes, but I'm here to tell you it's not. There's actually an easy way out of this. However, it takes two things that are admittedly in short supply. Remember these? Humility and an open mind. We used to honor these things in our cultural heroes, in our cultural icons. So let me challenge yours. Fake news is something that you already agree with. It really is. And that's why it's so insidious. So let me challenge you even further. It has nothing to do with being smart. Recognizing it has nothing to do with your intelligence or your education. Let me repeat that. It has nothing to do with being smart. Anyone and everyone can be tricked by propaganda or fake news. Why do I say this? Because we're built to fall for it. Fake news manipulates our evolutionary design. It takes advantage of who we are. We evolved to see the world through biases. It's a feature, it's not a bug. Biases may have helped us make fast decisions in an overloaded environment when first coming down from the trees, maybe. It was meant to assist us in our own survival. We used it to create group or tribal identity that helped assist us in our own survival. So whether we still need it or not is unclear, but it's how we're wired. So I'm saying that everyone is susceptible. Smart, educated people are susceptible. Liberals and conservatives are all susceptible. We all have internal biases that blind us to other ideas. Now, I'm not going to represent myself as an expert in psychology. This is just something that I read about because I'm deeply concerned about it and I'm interested in it. And I don't really want this to be about proving the research either. It's what I found compelling. I can make a lot of links and some background information available to anybody who would like it. I'm just going to ask you to trust me on this for the next 6 minutes or so. So simply put, we have an internal capability of dismissing information that contradicts our preconceptions. And clearly, social media algorithms are brilliant at learning our interests and surrounding us with more of them, reconfirming our confirmations and creating bubbles of certainty that feels intuitively like indisputable truths until we have completely divergent views of reality. Now, these signs were everywhere last November when I used to go ride my bike around the neighborhood. Different houses, same neighborhood, with this point of view. I'm sure some of you saw these as well. So it's easy to look back. The example that we always look at is the most frightening implementation or outcome of propaganda, fake news. And it's easy to look back and consider the Nazis a bunch of fools who fell for the foolishness. But trust me, you and I are just as easily propagandized as the smart, educated Germans who gave us Beethoven and Goethe and Einstein. We're different by degrees, probably circumstances, but not by species. In other words, it's not them. It's me. And by me, I mean you. So that's where the power is. That's where the opportunity is. Because if you don't believe that you could possibly be manipulated by media because you're too well educated, because you're above that kind of thing, because you know better, you've actually lost your primary defense. Because fake news manipulates those biases which are inside of us to feel very intuitively like an obvious truth. But this presentation is not about the truth. It's not about showing you how to change people's minds to see the truth. That's another kind of pandemic in itself, because we seem to be suffering from this pandemic of trying to be right and prove other people wrong. I mean, this only ends up making us crazy. When's the last time that someone actually changed their mind based on a Facebook article that you sent to them to change their mind? About as many times as you've probably changed your mind when someone sent you a link doing the same thing. I mean, you can't prove to a Mets fan that they should be a Yankees fan because obviously the Yankees are the better team to root for. It's impossible. It's like a religion. So I repeat, this is not about finding some truth through this fake news. This is about not allowing yourself to be propagandized in the first place. And I will be the first to admit, this is very hard. Being open to the idea that I am capable of unseen manipulation is very, very hard. Listening with an open mind to other sides and their ideas, which feel inexplicable to me, is very, very hard. If it's built into our evolutionary design, then pushing back on it is very, very hard. I'm just as guilty as anyone. So you might want to know, as I think about this, what is going on here anyway? Where is all of this fake news coming from? What's driving it? And I'm not going to go into great detail with this, but I do think it's important to point out that our whole media model has changed with the internet. Call it outrage pornography. It's the clicks. Clicks are revenue. Selling ads in the newspaper doesn't exist anymore. Media sites online make money through clicks. And outrage is very good for generating clicks. So we are in a moment of a kind of manufactured dissent. I'm outraged. You're outraged about my outrage. I'm outraged that you're not outraged about my outrage. It goes on. I mean, any Facebook thread is almost an embarrassment of humanity, of grown-ups acting like children, just being pissed off at each other and pissed off at other people for being pissed off in the beginning. So it's embarrassing, yes, but it's also kind of dangerous. But, we have learned to read labels better. We've learned to eat better. We've changed our consuming habits in that regard. I mean, look what we used to live on: Wonder Bread and cigarettes. We can learn to consume media smarter as well. So what's the easy trick that I promised? So assuming that you're willing to consider that you might be subconsciously susceptible to propaganda, how do you know if what you're reading or watching is trustworthy? And I'm going to show you 2 sentences how you can do it. If it treats any possible alternative view as absurd, it's propaganda. If it references the existing of other interpretations without mocking them, then it is more likely to be journalism. So I'm going to say in this slide for one more minute, I'm going to say it again. If what you're engaging with considers the possibility of any other way of looking at the issue as ridiculous, you should be suspicious of it. In fact, you should discount it, even if you like it, even if you agree with it, especially if you agree with it. However, if what you're reading acknowledges without drama that other views exist, without putting them down, just referencing them as reasonable possibilities, it's more likely to be journalism. So from there, you can decide if you want to trust it or not trust it. You can keep watching your cable channel if that's what you like, no problem. You can keep reading your favorite blog if that's what you like, no problem. But you might want to do it with some newfound self-awareness and an open mind. And yes, this is a very simple rule that solves a very big problem, and it's done that way by design. Okay, so right now I'm going to read your mind, because right now you're thinking about all the exceptions to where these 2 rules will never work. Are we supposed to stand under falling water and be open to the idea that someone tells us it's not raining? Here's what I'm asking you to do. Don't do that. There's an old marketing rule that works really well. In an over-communicated marketplace, it's the simplest message that gets through. So social media, cable news, our online lives are insanely over-communicated. So push the extreme examples like this aside. Let the general principles stand. It works pretty well most of the time. Try it with your friends. Try it on yourself. Let's do it together. Fox News is not all propaganda. The New York Times is not all journalism. This is written for my liberal friends. This is written for my conservative friends. Both are true, some of the time. The other side, you do this with everything that you engage with. It's not that hard. It's pretty obvious when you read it or watch it. The other side can't be wrong about everything. Your side can't be right all the time. And if you stop trying to win and show that the other person is a fool, a beautiful thing happens. We start having conversations again. Make it your goal to get the following outstanding compliment. Quote, I didn't know I could talk to one of you, unquote. And by you, you could reframe it. You liberal or you conservative. I've gotten that once or twice. It's one of my proudest moments outside of my kids. Because if someone from the other side says that to you, I didn't know I could talk to people like you, you will have performed a radical act of civil responsibility. If we can all learn to recycle, we can learn to be on the lookout for propaganda, and we can approach even our own points of view with an open mind that possibly we have been coerced by what we've been reading in the social media bubble that we live in. The thing of it is, most of us agree on most things. Polls, even 70% of us agree that we agree on most things. Research shows that 40% of Americans say politics is stressing them out, and 4%, the equivalent of 10 million US adults, reported suicidal thoughts related to politics. We're not happy about this, yet we're participating, but we're not happy about it. So think about that. 10 million adults actually think about killing themselves over our political polarization. Trust journalism. Ignore propaganda. And we'll get through this. Yes, that means very likely you need to ignore most of the news that you see out there right now, which makes you wonder, do we really need to be this informed? I struggle with this all the time, especially in the current environment. Well, maybe that's next year's presentation. We can talk about how we can break our news addictions. Mostly, here's hoping 2021 can lead to a lot more conversations between friends, even those who have wholly different points of view. So I'll just leave this up there and repeat that rule. When you're engaging with some sort of information, if it treats anything else as ridiculous, you should read it suspiciously, even if you like it. If it acknowledges that other things exist without putting them down, it's more likely to be trustworthy information that isn't trying to coerce you in some way. And that's it. That's my name. If you want to read a little bit more about these kinds of things, I write about them now and again at that Medium site. I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to show this face for radio. And if you've had any questions while I was going on, I didn't know. And I know I can't hear you. So you can post them in the chat there, and I'll see if I can address them. And I'm very happy that a few of you joined here. You bet. Thank you. I'll just stick around for a few minutes in case anybody wants to comment and ask a question or two, or go on with the rest of this this awesome event. Thank you. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you guys taking your time out. You're welcome. Thank you. I'm going to I'll stay on here for another minute or two, but I'll be here and I'll just turn this off. You can look at my face for radio there. They ought to require this, and someone just posted that they ought to require this in schools. I can't disagree with you more. It's something I feel very passionate about as well. And I hope that as we start to learn about engaging with media the way we've learned to engage with, the environment or nutrition, that they will start to teach this kind of thing in school, by the way. Someone asked a really good question, so I'm going to answer it. I'll stick on the phone here for a second or two on Zoom. How could I have a conversation without pressuring someone who might have a different opinion when I'm trying to learn more about their perspective? It's the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that I have, especially when it's someone that I love and admire and I want to get along with them. The only thing I can tell you that works for me, one, is humor. Humor is a wonderful reducer of tension. And you make a joke about it, even at your own expense. Like my dad, who's gone now. I'll just give a quick example. My dad, who's I'm more of a, I'll just also admit it, I'm probably more of a moderate liberal, and he was more of a right-wing conservative. Not even moderate conservative. He was way over on the other side. And I loved him. And when Trump got elected, I was really concerned, and he was exuberant. And we didn't talk for 2 weeks, which broke my heart. And basically, I just said, look, Dad, I love you. I'll support the communists in my choice. You keep supporting the fascist of yours. And he laughed, and it broke the ice. I didn't convince him. And I guess that's the point. I think we all feel compelled to convince the other side. And that's probably where a lot of the frustration comes from. The idea is to learn from the other side without emotion. And that's what I could suggest. If that works for you, it seems to work for me. Yeah. You want to get along. Yeah. It is good to know what the other side is saying. I always do this with the other side. I can't catch myself saying it all the time because there are other sides. I just really think we share a lot more than we realize. And there's a little bit of a manufactured dissent is going on. Obviously, if someone's espousing violent views that I find disgusting, I'm not going to engage and try to understand their position. Like I said, those are the extremes. But for the most part, the other side is the same kind of desires. We love our kids, and we like clean air and clean water, and we tend to like democracy for the most part. And I just think we have more in common than we're being led to believe. These are great questions. Thank you for them. Yeah, I'll stay here for another minute or two. You're welcome to throw a couple more comments out there. Well, unless there's anything else, I'm going to shut my face off again. And please, I'm here another couple minutes. So if you want to comment on anything else, I'd love to engage. Thank you so much. Yeah, as I think it's Seika just said, and I'm back. It's harder because you really care for your family, and it's true. I have some close friends right now who I care for deeply, and we can talk about anything except this. I'm just trying not to be right all the time. Ideas on the difference between news and video versus written news and its influence. I don't know that it's so different, frankly. I think that they're both guilty of doing that simple correlation. Even the channel that I choose to watch, I don't watch it too often, but when I engage with my cable news channel, I notice a lot that they don't give any credence to any other way of looking at anything. Now, either there is no legitimacy in the other side. It's hard to believe, because then you go to the other news channel and they're saying kind of the same exact thing about what I'm watching. It just can't be. It simply can't be. So I don't think that there's a difference between video or news and the written. I think it really comes down to those two simple facts. If it allows that other points of view exist, that it's being open-minded itself. Trust it. We'll be more likely to trust it if it treats any possible way, even if it's news you like, if it's my channel. And you're talking about the leader I don't particularly care for. It makes me feel good, but I question it. It feels a little bit coercive. So I wish I could hear you guys, because I hate to just be spouting at you. It is definitely something that I think makes us all really unhappy right now, especially because the world feels like it's coming apart. But I'll just leave you with one more thought that I find heartening. I'm just finished reading the book on the Civil War. Really good book, by the way, A. Lincoln, it's called. It's a beautiful biography of Abraham Lincoln. Really a man who I think strove to do these kinds of open-minded, humble approach to differences. And a good example, ironically, just happened to be something I finished reading. And when you go back to the Civil War, you can see the most extreme example of how fake news was completely causing the rupture that led to that violence. And, it's a little bit alarming in a way. And then maybe not, because we're not there. I mean, even just the idea that we're about to break out in some kind of a warfare is a little bit of perhaps a hyperbolic way of looking at the world. I think most of us would not be eagerly picking up arms at the moment because someone else voted for another guy. I think some of the propaganda out there is a little bit overly dramatic. So I don't think we're anywhere near any situation like that. And I'm pretty hopeful that this will be something we learn to deal with. The question is, do I think laws against fake news are helpful? This is a really great question. I have to say that that's a slippery slope for me. I don't even like slippery slopes, but that one feels a little slippery because I think that the most long-lasting social change happens when people generally decide to do something on their own. I think I'm quite torn about whether we need laws. I am a fan of free speech. And I think when you go down that path, you create counter reactions that really reduce the possibility of any, sort of collegiate community solutions. So I'm not a fan of laws against fake news. I do think one thing I'll leave you with on that topic, which is I do think that the media has a responsibility not to present completely false information in terms of defamation. And we're seeing right now, there's some lawsuits being brought against some of the completely unfounded claims. I'm not going to have an open-minded about pure, the whole idea if it's raining and someone says it's not. I mean, if somebody makes an accusation that's completely unfounded, they're being sued for that. That is an effective way, it seems to me, to possibly cause the media to be a little bit self-policing, which I think is not a bad way to approach it. Laws against making money from fake news. Well, maybe that's sort of a way to do that as well. I mean, if you make a completely unfounded claim and then you're going to be sued for that, maybe you're going to have to think twice. The way newspapers have always had to do anyway. If you think about it, newspapers are supposed to make sure that they have on record evidence before they publish. And maybe that's something that could be forced into social media, being forced to do that as well. That if they face lawsuits for defamation, they could, perhaps self-police. So we'll see. We got 1 minute left. This has been an absolute blast. I wish I could hear you guys, because you probably have. Well, yeah, that's a good point. Wouldn't they be able to hide behind protecting the source? Fair enough. Yeah. Clearly, these are complicated questions, which is why, as the last minute comes in, which is why I do believe it's a personal responsibility thing, says the liberal. But I do believe this is personal responsibility. If we are open-minded and we're willing to recognize and not be propagandized in the first place, I found sharing this philosophy, even with my conservative friends, They will often always say, actually, I agree with you on that. So I think there's hope for this. And thank you so much. And I so appreciate the time. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.